Reviving an established franchise can be quite tricky, especially in the world of game shows. There has to be enough of a change and enough time to have passed for it to get the, "Oh, I remember the show" reaction from viewers, and that interest. And there has to be some quality and care in the production of the show as well. Thus, we have the era of the mid-'80s, and it was revival central for Mark Goodson Productions. After Trivia Trap in 1984, the rest of the shows that came out up until Mark's death in 1992 were revivals. All of the revivals got at least 9 months on the air, with the exception of one, which is one of the few Mark Goodson shows to fit this category of 26 weeks or less. Thus, I give you the 1987 version of Blockbusters.
Get ready for our game of skill and strategy. Blockbusters! And here's the star of Blockbusters, Bill Rafferty!
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Hello, everybody in the audience. Good looking group out there today.
Debuting on January 4th, 1987, Blockbusters returned to NBC airwaves. With Bill Cullen enjoying retirement from hosting after The Joker's Wild, Bill Rafferty was selected to host this revival. Here, 2 solo contestants competed against one another on the hexagon-filled board. While the same basic format was used as the original, this revival had quite a few differences to set it apart. For this edition, I'll do a compare and contrast to the original, as what the show did similarly to the original 1980 version, and what they did differently. So let's start things off with the host.
And here's the star of Blockbusters, Bill Cullen!
Hi, Claire. Hi there, gang. Hello there, and thank you very kindly. Welcome to Blockbusters.
The original was done by Bill Cullen. There were game show hosts, and then there was the Dean in Bill Cullen. He was glib, articulate, and knew what he was doing up there under the brightest of lights. 1980 would have been him entering his 4th decade hosting game shows, so he was well seasoned in how it all went down. What he also excelled at was being able to laugh at himself and turn what could have been a meh moment into a really memorable one, and there were a lot of them on the original run. For the revival, Bill Rafferty was pegged to host it. His tenure as a game show host is an interesting one to say the least. He got his start in 1984 with Every Second Counts after Real People got canceled on NBC. He was buried in a lot of bad time slots thanks to a combination of Group W being on a massive downturn at the time and the market getting really glutted. Having Wheel, Tic-Tac-Toe, The Joker's Wild, Family Feud, and 2 new shows in Jeopardy and Name That Tune would do that. Mark saw something in him and wanted him to do the syndicated version of Card Sharks in September of 1986. While he was doing that, he was also tapped to host the revival of Blockbusters. He's one of the few people to have hosted 2 different shows concurrently of one another. His moon style fit Card Sharks a lot more than it did Blockbusters, though, although Rafferty's wit was definitely shown here. He, like Cullen, was also razor sharp. What set Rafferty apart was that he was also brutally honest when contestants gave really dumb answers.
What you are the Eastern Europeans who originated the tradition of painting Easter eggs? Maria.
Yugoslavian?
No. No.
Oh,
No.
shoot.
Yeah. Yugoslavian starts with a Y. But,
Not H spellers. Not H spellers.
now we're getting redundant, Maria. Okay, let's continue on right now.
Rafferty was a bit around the edges, but that added to his New York Bronx-style charm. Now let's talk about the big hook of the original. The main crux of the show was that it would see if 2 heads were better than 1. To make it happen, the show was always a solo player taking on a family pair. You figured that with 2 people they'd have a wider knowledge base and be able to control the game. To level that playing field though, a 20 hexagon filled board was used with the goal being to connect either top to bottom or side to side. This had a hook and it was quite a sight to see. What also helped was that this show, unlike most other Goodson-Todman shows, didn't have that much in the way of limiting big winners. The limits were that they could appear in the gold run a max of 10 and later 20 times. This led to a few people winning upwards of over $100,000. That's something that never happened on a Goodson-Todman show before. The Revival didn't have that hook at all. While it had the board, it was a 1 versus 1 battle. So with the major hook of the original gone, they leveled the playing field by flipping the advantage in round 2. Aside from that, there was kinda no hook to the show whatsoever. In regards to the game itself, both versions had the same core format. The first letter in the answer is displayed on the 20 hexagon filled board. The host asks the question, and if they are correct, the hex is filled with their color. In the Cullen version, the solo player was always red, the family pair was always white. In the Rafferty version, the champion was always white, and the challenger was red. The object was to connect either top to bottom or side to side depending on your color. Because the colors were set, red connected with as few as 4 correct answers, and white connected to side with as few as 5 correct answers. Thus the leveling of the playing field for the original. They needed the extra correct answer to connect. In the Rafferty version, champion played with a disadvantage in round 1, where in round 2, the challenger played with a disadvantage, as the colors swapped in round 2, with white being top to bottom and red being side to side. Also in the Rafferty version, if it was tied going into round 3, there was no advantage given. So you had an interesting looking 4x4 grid with red working top to bottom and white working side to side. The Rafferty version did try to make the game fair by flipping the advantage and then by having no advantage, but just highlights that the show works only with the 2v1 format. It is contorting a lot in order to make the format work as it should. The gold one was played the same in both versions. The champion had to go from one side to the other, connecting the gold to the gold. A correct answer turns the hexagon gold and they continue on. If they are wrong or they pass, then it gets blacked out and they have to work their way around the block, making their path harder. If they connect both sides in 60 seconds, they win $5,000. It's a great format that some decry as too easy. I can assure you it's not. When you get a 2 hexagon block in your way, it's tough to work around that and still have enough time to complete it. Another interesting twist is that in the middle of its run, the Rafferty version changed their jackpot structure. If a contestant failed at winning, their next gold run would be worth $5,000 more until they won it. This is where I want to bring up the Revival's use of technology. Instead of having the questions on cards like the original, the Revival exclusively used computers for essentially everything but the buzzers. While the board and all of its animations look beautiful, the execution for the questions is mixed, especially when it came to the gold run. It would take a couple of seconds for the question to load on screen so that Rafferty could read it. It hampered the contestant so that less questions were asked. You could hear him asking for the question to pop up so that he could read it. On average for a gold run with any amount of missed questions, around 8 to 10 would be asked. The length of the questions were the same as the original. It was the loading of them that caused problems. I do believe that if the questions were either on cards or the same way Cullen was getting to them in the original, it would have been a fairer bonus game. Another knock against the Rafferty version is the sloppiness of the production sometimes. There were a couple of times where Rafferty had to go to a judge and something would go wrong, which could, and in some cases, should have been edited out and reshot. And then there are cases where something should have happened and it wasn't shown. Here's one instance about a correct answer being declared wrong, but then said it was right, and we have a bit of a mess.
What U is a sound wave with such high... Nancy.
Ultra?
We will not accept it. I'll repeat it again. What U is a sound wave with such high frequency that humans cannot hear it.
Ultrasound?
No, that is incorrect. And you just had it done, didn't you? Ultrasonic. Ultrasonic is what we were looking for. So, again, we go back to another U question. Yes. You'll take that. That's right, and Deirdre is the winner of the match.
It made the show less professional than what you'd expect from a Mark Goodson production. I know I've said quite a few negative things about the Rafferty version of the show in comparison to the original. Having said that, though, I do think the show is a good one. But not having the hook that was used in the original and essentially every single international version of the show hurt it a lot. It was fine, but it just wasn't the Blockbusters people remembered, nor was it memorable enough to stand up on its own. Here's the question, though. Why was it so short-lived compared to not just every show on the network at the time, but for Mark Goodson himself? At the 10:30 time slot, it was going up against another Mark Goodson game show in Card Sharks. Card Sharks would hold on to that time slot until its cancellation in 1989. It was also competing against whatever was airing locally on ABC, so that was a crapshoot. I also don't know if the ratings killed it. Another theory that has been postulated, and the one that is most likely, is that Blockbusters was a filler show until Classic Concentration was ready to go. When it was ready to go in May of 1987, Blockbusters was canceled. That would also explain some of the shoddiness of the production. The people on the show knew that it wasn't lasting, and a good chunk of them would just be heading to work on Classic Concentration immediately afterwards. I guess that explains the weird ending we got from the Rafferty version at the end, when they promoted the show on their finale.
Listen, before we get started with the Go One, I do have to remind you of a very, very special event. Your old favorite Concentration is coming back to television. And if you are good at solving Reader's puzzles and would like to prove it, here is how you do it. You listen very carefully, pencil in hand, to Rich Jeffries.
Okay, Bill, if you want to prove it, you have to try out to be a contestant on Concentration. How do you do that? All you have to do is call. Area code 213-856-0638. Now, we'd like to hear from as many of you as possible, so please give us a call at area code 213-856-0638. Call us right now. Back to you, Bill Rafferty.
Thank you very much. And just to show you that our hearts are in the right place, why don't you call us Collect?
And that will do it for this edition of 26 Weeks or Less. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment about a show you would like to see covered on 26 Weeks or Less, or any of our other formats that we have here, like Games O Canada. Maybe you'd like to see a new tier maker, or just want to hear me ramble about other game shows, or maybe a home game you'd like to hear me talk about. And one other thing. If you want to help support us financially, maybe help us get a few more videos out, maybe get some new shows debuting on here, become a Patreon backer and get your name on the credits at patreon.com/GameShowGumbo. I'm Cindy Seidelman. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. We're going to have more content coming. Bye, everyone.